Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Hell is for children, and you should not be paid for your love with your bones and your flesh.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Hell is for Children. This show is on every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 2100 hours Central European Time. My name is Geerte Frenken, and this show is all about the topic of protective mothers and their children. So what's a protective mother? A protective mother tries to protect her child or children from their abusive father by many means necessary, which is an uphill battle in today's global corrupt family court system that thrives on paternal entitlements. And today's guest is protective mother TabathaThebeau, who lost parental rights of her two children to her abusive criminal ex and his aunt due to false allegations of mental illness and despite evidence of child molestation, abuse, and neglect. Welcome to Hell is for Children, Tabitha.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. Is because of brave protective mothers like you coming forward about your story that we can bring awareness to our global plight, since there are millions of us and not everyone has the courage to share their story with the world. So we want to thank you for coming on today and sharing your story. Let's start with when you were still married and things were falling apart.
We were living in California where I was born and raised. I met him and he was a tattoo apprentice at the time. I fell in love with him due to his drive and his ambition. And and his creativity, and that's something that is hard to find in people anymore. And I clung to that, and we dated a while. We lived together. We decided that we were going to have a family, and we moved into our own place, pretty much changing the business, which I had run a very successful business, and minimized it because he felt that it was causing too much stress in my life. And he wanted to be more, I think, more of a center of attention, and me to pay more attention to his business. And so I have 3 degrees, and marketing was one of my major highlighted points in which I was pretty well at, and so he did very well for himself after he completed his apprenticeship. I became pregnant after we got married in October 2010. I was pregnant with my daughter shortly after. I found out that I had a sexually transmitted disease when I went in for my 7th month examination, and found out that there was infidelities, and through other avenues found out that there was not just one but many that I had not known about. When it was discussed, he begged me not to leave him. He cried and he said, "Please don't leave me, I love you." And I looked at him and I said, "You're my best friend." And he knew that I was not raised like a normal person. I raised myself. My brother and I only have one picture of me and my brother, and that was with him holding me when I was about 2, almost 3 years old. about the same time my parents were taken from us, and he was adopted, and I was put in a group home. And he knew that I wasn't like most people. I'm completely different from the typical male or typical female. I'm not catty or petty or, oh, you cheated on me. When I'm married, I'm committed, and I want to make it work, especially with a child. I mean, I really did. And I asked him, are you in love with her? He said no. And I said, okay, so it was just sex. I can understand that. I can forgive that. We can move on. I mean, let's make it work. And he decided that moving to a different state and starting over would be something that would be best for us. Me being a Taurus, not so hip on the idea because I don't like change. But I decided God would guide me, and as long as I was with the person who claimed to be my soulmate and the father of my child, and was going to be there until I died with no teeth and wrinkled, and we were going to be buried together, I figured, why not? So I took the plunge, and we moved in 2012, and lived with his aunt and uncle, which were both military and very by the book. And actually, she became like a mother I'd never had before. She taught me a lot of things and helped me being a new mother, period. She was a mother, so she guided me in a lot of things that were, positive, as far as, she was also a cancer survivor. And since I had cancer in my mid-20s and had my thyroid removed, I understood why she lived the lifestyle she did, and she was so pro, eating a certain way and living a certain lifestyle, and her viewpoints on things like, your car, when someone gets into your car is a reflection of you. If you have a dirty car, that's a reflection on you. I never looked at it that way because I never had a mother in my life. So I always took it as constructive criticism, and I took constructive criticism pretty well, but at the same time, from her sometimes it seemed harsh. And I think I took it a little too personal. But she did teach me a lot and helped me grow. And we had our son in February of 2013. My ex had become very successful, and we had run the studio and the gallery and everything out of our home, and had just gotten back from Hell City, which is one of the largest tattoo conventions out here. My best friend from Cali had flown out for it. And when we came back from the convention, he was packing his things, and I was a little confused as to what was going on, and he said, well, I just need time to clear my head. And I was like, well, why are you taking everything with you? If you're just going to be gone for a short period of time. And he says, well, because I need to work and I need to take my things with me. And I was like, okay. Well, I didn't realize he was clearing a different head than the one on his shoulders. So, and with my neighbor and best friend, the only friend that I had made since I'd been in the state, and thinking, when you have a best friend, being raised by myself, been considered resilient, I still made sure I graduated high school, even though the system spit me out about a month and a half prior to graduating high school. I still made sure I graduated, still got degrees, still worked, still became a non-statistic of what most children in the system are. I vowed to not have children until I was able to give them the life that I didn't have and was the mom that my mom wasn't to me. And um, and that is probably why the things I instilled in my children so young, especially being brother and sister, were such a huge issue with me. And it's not that I, grounded into them, but I made it fun, to teach them, love each other, never go to bed mad, always hug each other and say you're sorry, and things that I wish I had done and things that I wish I had the opportunity to do, which I never did. I didn't have a dad, didn't have a mom, and having the paternal aunt take my side when he walked out in August of 2013, everyone in the family was like, well, what happened? You just had a son. How most men would be ecstatic. They just had a son. But, I couldn't get a reason out of him. I said, please, can you tell me why? I mean, I gave you another chance when you blatantly cheated on me numerous times, and just for the one time alone, I said, let's make it work. I've done nothing wrong, but yet you won't even give me a chance. And we had actually made reservations in Vegas to renew our vows. And we had the whole trip planned to do in October, which was when we were married. And we wanted to go out there, renew our vows, have like a little mini quick vacation, and then come back. He kept saying, no, I don't want a divorce. I just need time. And I said, okay. Well, that kept going on and on and on. And I kept seeing him walking across, the driveway with the other girl. And I was like, okay, he's blowing smoke up my butt or hers, and I'm not going to be a part of this game. And any person that is a friend would either say, hey, I don't want to be involved. If you have problems, you need to get involved with someone else, work it out, whatever. They wouldn't just hop on the opportunity. To me, that's not a friend. So I realized quickly a lot of the people that I had met here were really not friends. They were more acquaintances, and they had taught me a lot about being too nice to the wrong people and giving people too much credit right away instead of being a little more standoffish. But then when I was that way, people considered me to be, oh, well, we just thought you were a bitch. And I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry. I've had a lot happen to me, and I'm not trying to play the victim card by any means, but when you've been, hurt and lied to, and, your heart kicked and stomped on, and, you've been told that you are someone's soulmate and been with them for an extensive amount of time and have children with them and moved from state to state, and, you've expressed things with that person who nobody else in your life you've expressed with. I mean, he's the only man who's ever even spoken to my father, who's been in jail since I was 3, and asked his permission to marry me, which I was honored that he did that, and actually encouraged him to start talking to his mother again because I didn't want to get married without her there. And, I felt like by everybody else's standards that I had helped improve turning him into a man from a boy, and that he had come so far. They didn't understand what was wrong. And the family was like, this isn't the same person. Why isn't, marriage counseling being brought up? Why aren't you going to that? And I said, well, I brought it up. And he shoved it off saying that he needs time. He needs time. And so I gave him time. And after a while, he would come and see the children periodically, and he would be here for a short period of time.
So you had your second child at this point?
Yeah, he was only, let's see, he was born in February 26, 2013. And he walked out on at the end of August of 2013, and remarried in December of 2013.
But you also have a daughter with him, correct?
Yeah, she was born in California,
Okay.
and she's very smart, very, you can't get nothing past this one. She's very much like me. She looks just like me, but at the same time, she has a little spark of, the little horns pop out every once in a while. But she's very witty. She's very smart, and she's beautiful. Everyone has said that she, when she's around me, that there's no doubt she looks exactly like me. And I never was trying to make her look like me, which is why I guess her hair was cut short and her bangs were grown out, because, people thought I was trying to make her a mini me, which wasn't the case. It's just being a mom. I mean, she wanted to look like Tangled. That was her thing. She wanted to look like Tangled. And instead of making her feel bad, it was Mother's Day, not this last year, but I guess this 2015, yes, 16 actually. Shortly after that, I wasn't able to see them anymore. That was my birthday / Mother's Day present, was her showing up with her hair cut from her waist to her neck. And she looked at me very sad. And I looked at her and I said, "What's wrong, honey?" And she was like, I don't look like Tangled. And I sat with her and I told her, I said, "Well, we remember the book, don't you? You remember the movie, too," because she had the book where you stick the stickers everywhere in the book and you can rearrange them. And I said, "Do you remember what she did at the very end?" And she said, "No." And I said, "You remember. She cut her hair to save everybody. And that didn't change who she was. It's hair. It grows back, And I go, "You're still beautiful. And no matter what color and if your head was shaved," I said, "it doesn't matter. You're still Mommy's beautiful girl." And then she got happy and didn't feel as if she was being put down or made to feel bad because she didn't have, the hair she wanted. She started, getting like that picture in particular was the picture that I took of her because she was screaming at me. As she rode her bike, she threw her bike down, and I was trying to make her feel like a princess. That's why she has a tiara on her head. And I said, "Mommy does want you to stay here, and Mommy doesn't want you and your brother to leave. But I am glad you and your brother are together, and you're his big sister."
Well, let's go back to where he's gone, right? So he moved out temporarily.
Yeah, he moved, and I don't know how many places he moved to. Honestly, I wasn't keeping track. I was more focused on the paternal aunt stepped in and basically was like, put her boot in my butt pretty much, and said, "Listen, you need to get your head out of your butt. You have 2 children here that are depending on you." And I needed that. And it's hard to look back on the things that people did and said to you that you took for granted, or you took personally because you felt like they were trying to take over, but when all they were trying to do was help you. And she did so much by opening up herself to me, when in all actuality, through the divorce process, which I finally was awarded full decision making of the children in April of 2014, she continued to support me, continued to come see the children, continued to be a part of their birthdays, holidays, everything, and still accepted me as family when she didn't have to. I mean, technically, I'm not, and but she didn't ever put that against me. And I trusted her, and I told her, you know, I made her power of attorney, and I told her I trust that she will keep my children safe and make the best decisions. She was an ex-corporal in the military. She was very by the book, and I knew that she would never put my children in jeopardy, and that she would always have their best interest at heart and not in the best interest of, as we know what the best interest means. But because she loved them, and my children are the kind of children that when you're around them even for 10 minutes, you're instantly in love with them and don't ever want to see that you want to be auntie, you know. But yeah, he moved, and apparently he remarried, and during the part of the court, I still allowed him to see the children because I was, you know, trying to do the co-parenting thing, and I was going through the partner because she stated he didn't want to talk to me, which I wasn't going to argue or play games. I was just trying to be civil. I never spoke badly about him or her. It did hurt my feelings, and I did talk to the paternal aunt about, you know, why is she coming here calling me by my name instead of mommy, and telling me that, you know, I'm not her mom, and that, you know, that this, you know, partner is now her mom, and that, you know, her dad's even telling her that I'm not her mom, and she's confused. And I didn't want to address it to her, being she's so young. I said, how would I always goofed with her, and I would nickname her Google, because she was like a Google to me when I had any problems. And she's very homeopathic, essential oils, very, you know, nothing like anything with high corn syrup, fructose, anything like that. She was always telling me Juice Plus and natural things, and I quit smoking after 15 years when my son had breathing problems, and cold turkey, just, you know, because I wanted to do whatever I could for my children. I was on medication for my disabilities, my back surgeries and whatnot that the paternal aunt had taken me to. During family court, which they deemed me still completely capable of taking care of my children. I'd fired 2 pain management specialists after that due to the amount of medication they wanted to put me on, and I do my research. I was like, there's no way I'm taking this much medication. You're crazy. And so after the divorce, he decided to go on. I got a text, I guess, from the girlfriend saying that they weren't going to come pick up the kids that weekend, and that going against what the court order was, I still, like I said, allowed them to see the children, and they would come and pick the children up and bring them back. And 90% of the time, I would get a call sometimes an hour or two after picking them up, asking me if I was home and if they could bring the kids back. And I, of course, had already made plans for the weekend. And I would be like, no, but I can be, you know. And it seemed like it was more of a convenience thing than it was spending time with the children. So he went on a long honeymoon, and that's why he didn't show up for his scheduled visit that weekend, because they were going to be gone for 2 weeks, and when they got back, they would contact me. Well, when they got back, I did get a message, and I remember being really caught up with work, and I had a friend who had just was dealing with, I guess, Save the Family, and was moving up north with her cousin or her brother or somebody like that, and asked if she could keep a couple things at my house. And her daughter was the same age as my son, so they were outside playing in the pool and having fun together. And I figured, well, why not stay at my house for a couple days, and that way I'm not alone, and the kids have someone to play with, and we'll just make it a fun situation. Well, it turned out to be not fun at all. It turned out to be a nightmare. And it turned out to be that she ended up turning into a 2 to 3 day visit, because they said that's how long it would take to drive down to pick them up, into now she was my roommate, and I had her move in because I was depressed. And I was like, okay, this makes no sense to me. So the day was it, okay, now mind you, remember I had one full custody decision making, was still working on a co-parenting agreement with the father and the partner, something that we could, mutually agree on between us, that we didn't have to go through the court and just deal with it. I never asked for child support, and if he had actually come to court those days instead of just not coming, or even requested the audio, he would clearly hear that I said, no, I don't want, paternity, when they ask for money,
Alimony.
alimony. I didn't want alimony. I didn't want child support. I didn't want anything. But I guess because the judge felt he was disrespected by the fact that he didn't go take his test, he shaved his head, he didn't show up, he didn't do his parenting classes, that he was going to throw the book at him, and he took it out on me, thinking that I did that, and I didn't.
So hold up for a second here, because you're mentioning the shaving of the head. So the judge ordered your ex to test for drugs, like a hair follicle test?
He ordered both of us in court. He asked me, can you afford to go to task after court and do a hair follicle and a random UA? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, okay. And he asked him the same thing, and he said, yes, sir. Then he said, okay, can you provide your own court-appointed investigator? And I said, yes, sir. He asked him, and he said, no. And he asked me if I would pay for him. And I said, no. And he said, okay, so we will assign you one. And I said, okay. So I left from court and I went straight to task, and I did my hair follicle and my UA, and I did my parenting class and submitted it to my attorney immediately. And apparently he didn't do any of that, because I guess the court's notified when it's done and when it's not. And I don't remember, honestly, it's been quite a while since this has all happened, if he came after that. And I do believe the judge asked him, well, why didn't you take the hair follicle? And I think he had said something like, my hair wasn't long enough, or they said it was too short. But it wasn't at the time. He thought I had set him up for it, because, I mean, he was, both of us were marijuana smokers in California. Because I had cancer, I was prescribed it. I had a card and everything. And coming here, I didn't know the laws, and I seemed a little kind of almost frowned upon. And the cost and everything was so high, I was like, why even bother? So I just didn't pursue it. Somebody who's used to, smoking it a lot more than me, is, sorry, my fan was in my face. It's harder for them to stop, and I understand. I mean, it's kind of like, say, a Valium to somebody who needs to calm down. Marijuana affects everybody differently. The reason I was prescribed it was because they hoped that it would speed up my metabolism in order to help me maintain the weight that I was before, because I had gotten so big they tried everything, nothing worked. And I still am trying to get back down to the size that I was. I'm trying to back into that new wardrobe. And that was one of the things I love too about Jeff, is that he never judged me by my appearance. he actually made me feel special. And many of the men that I had dated, and I had only had been with one other person prior to that, in marriage-wise, which was long-term, which was a domestic violence situation. I had to be taken away by the police in 15 minutes. I left my whole life behind because I figured myself.
Let's go back to the court case that you're in with the father of your children. So he didn't end up submitting the hair follicle test? Am I getting that correct?
According to the court, they said he didn't. And then after that, he didn't show up to court anymore. And then I remember the judge stating that he said, shows here that the court, that the father has tried to relinquish his rights voluntarily, but I'm denying them because, number one, he's doing it in the wrong court, and number two, he is not going to be get off that easy kind of thing. And I was like, well, I knew I would never see a penny of child support.
But the judge wanted to keep your ex-husband responsible for the children, and he wanted him to pay child support.
Correct. And I'm not saying I don't agree with their theories or whatever, but my viewpoint on it with him was, if he could help with diapers or baby wipes or help with, maybe a utility bill here or there, you didn't have to give me cash. You know what I mean? I didn't want him to think that he was, for some reason he had in his mind, because we had been together for a while and we had our moments where we experimented with things in the past in another state before we were parents, that, that I was going to use this money because of the medication I was on, that I was going to abuse it, and then and because I know so many people here, you're not even from here, and you're probably one of my only friends, and I wanted to instill that in him, like, okay, I don't care about the money. I care about the children and making sure they're taken care of.
But here's the judge now ordering him to pay child support, which is the exact point that fueled the conflict that resulted afterwards.
Even though I told him I wasn't enforcing it, and I didn't bring it up in court, and the paternal aunt even mentioned, if you had bothered to come to court that day, you would have heard her say she didn't want anything, and I didn't. All I wanted was for us to be able to be civil with each other, and not I felt more like there was a lot of insecurity between, there was not closure, obviously, between me and him. I don't think that there was ever going to be, because of the involvement with the new partner and her thinking that I was trying to get back together with him, when it was more or less not about us anymore. It was about them and me wanting a life for them that I didn't have. And there was, of course, I'm not going to lie, of course I was jealous. Of course I was like, why would you leave what you have? You have two beautiful children. I'm not an ugly person. I'm older. I was much older than him, but I don't look my age. We were financially stable. We had our own place. We had our own car. We were doing fine. And the kids were happy. There was nothing that I felt that would even constitute any means necessary for there to be an argument. Like I said, the whole time we were together, we never argued. We never got in fist fights. We always communicated well, and almost like best friends do, And so I was kind of thrown for a loop. And then when I finally got him to give me an answer, I said, can you at least give me an answer as to why, what I did, why why are you walking away from this when this is everything you said you wanted? And he said, well, I guess I'm just a piece of shit. And I said, that is the worst excuse I've ever heard in my life. I said, that's not a reason. There's terrible people in the world, and everybody can change. Pain changes people. Becoming a Christian changes people. Lifestyles change people. But they are so stuck on the fact that I was a person that in California that I didn't want to be anymore. And I didn't like the people I surrounded myself with because they all had issues along with addictions. LA is not a place to raise children, and that is one of the reasons why we decided to move, is to get away from that. And moving here, I obviously made no friends because I was home all the time with the children. And, the friends I did make was the partner and her 3 children she already had from 3 previous relationships, and was living with her mother. And she taught me as well, being that she was a mom, several things too. And we had a lot in common, and we meshed well. So I didn't feel like she was in any way like a threat, to my relationship. If anything, I felt like she was there to support me and help me build up whatever may have been faltering. And
So let's go to what happens next. So you've gone to court, and you've gotten full custody of the children, and the judge did not allow your ex to relinquish his parental rights, and he ordered him to pay child support. What happens after that?
like I said, he didn't come and pick up the children one weekend that he was supposed to. And that was the weekend I got the message that they were going to go on I think a 2-week long vacation, honeymoon, and they would contact when they returned back to town. And I said, okay, well, I wish you had given me a little bit more notice, because I had them ready to go. I mean, it was very last minute. And when they did come back, I do remember getting a message saying I want to see the kids. And at that point in time, like I said, I was caught up in, my own personal business and things that I had to deal with, plus my friend who I was trying to help at the same time, because she had to be out of the home she was in, because Save the Family gives you a time limit of when you can be out before, legal action is taken. And so I was helping her move with one car, and 2 single moms and a little girl, and so I really didn't have a chance to get back to him, and I wasn't ignoring him. It was just, I felt like if he's going to make it to where things are on his schedule when he wants them, well, why can't I, take a break and get back to you when it's convenient for me?
Of course.
He took it as I was ignoring him. And that's when I started getting text messages like, I want to see my daughter, and he started calling me the C word. And, I was just like, whoa, okay, that was uncalled for. And I started talking to the partner, and I was like, I'm not trying to alienate him from them. I would never do that to my children, because I know what it's like. I strongly encourage them to have a relationship. I've never spoken badly about them. If anything, like I said, I've had them come back and talk to me as if I'm not their mom. I'm just some random person. And which hurt my feelings, but what am I supposed to say to my daughter? No, I'm your mother, It's like, I'm not going to cause any more mental or emotional confusion for them. They'd already been through enough. So I would try to contact, her and ask her, well, do you know why she's saying this? Or, why is she saying, certain things? And she would explain to me, oh, well, we play games, we do this, we do that. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And uh, September 20th, 2014, I had come back from shopping with my friend and her daughter, and we had gotten like some matching pajamas and stuff like that at the store for the kids. They were tired. We were past their designated nap time, so they were already fallen asleep in the car. We came back. I waited like I always do outside their bedroom door with it cracked until I could hear that they were quiet and weren't horsing around. And I walked into the bedroom, saw that my friend and her daughter were already passed out. So I was kind of like, well, I guess there's nowhere for me to go, so I'm going to go out on the back porch, get some fresh air, and the back porch was open. Mind you, I have 2 Yorkshire Terriers. I mean, if you literally fart in front of my front door, let alone ring the doorbell or knock, I mean, they're just plus my back door was open and I'm on the bottom floor, so anybody can hop over it and just walk right into my house. But I'm in HOA and secured housing, so that doesn't happen unless you live here. But he'd done it several times, and because our daughter was slick and decided to lock us out with a little broomstick in the sliding door. And so I knew that he was capable of doing it. So when the police report stated that he had called and stated that he was concerned that I was going to harm the children, they were in my apartment, and that he had made several attempts to contact me via the door, no answer, my phone, no answer, no records. Didn't hop over the wall, so he wasn't obviously that concerned. And then he called them and told them he knew I had a gun in the house. Well, of course he knew I had a gun in the house. He's the one who taught me how to handle a weapon, how to make sure it was not loaded, how to hand it to somebody, how to protect myself, basically. Took me to the shooting range, and it was holstered and put on the top of the 7-foot desk that I'm sitting at now, which is way up there, and had not been moved. He told them that I had sent text messages to him, which later turned out that it was sent to his partner, that I was going to kill my children and then myself because I can't take this anymore. And anyone who knew me knew that was totally out of character and not something I would say. So I was, I guess, what they call or have been referring to as swatted. I went outside and I had, I'd say probably about 7 to 10 officers straight ahead and around the building in all black SWAT tactical gear. And then I looked this way and then I saw the same thing, and I'm thinking, okay, am I on punked? I'm looking behind me thinking somebody is getting in trouble. And there was no one behind me. I'm like, where's Ashton Kutcher? And I'm like, okay, there's no bachelor party going on. What's going on? So then they saw me and I heard them screaming my name, and I'm like, what's going on? Drop your weapons, drop your weapons. And I had a mini ice cream sandwich in my hand from the freezer, and I dropped it, and I'm like, I don't have a weapon. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I'm a law-abiding citizen. In 41 years, I've never been arrested. I've never been in any type of legal altercation, that has, you know what I mean? I have a clean record. They call me, I guess, clean, or I don't know what they call, plain. That's what they call me. So I don't even have fingerprints on record. So being
This is kind of wild. So your ex just calls the police, says that you're homicidal and suicidal, and they send a SWAT team to your
and there was
house.
no order. There was no order to take me. It was just him calling saying, "I'm worried about my children. They're in this home. She has a gun. She's crazy. She's a psychopath. You know, she's a heavy drug user." All these things that he said. Of course, you know, they're thinking children, gun. You know, all these things. They didn't look into the fact that he had a criminal record and the fact that 90% of the criminal record he had was due to drugs. He had warrants. He had been, driving on a suspended license numerous times. And, you know, I had nothing on my record. I had no mental illness. I had nothing. And so when they came over, they said that in the police reports that I have state that I was cooperative, that I was just asking what was going on. I was more concerned about my children. My children are asleep in the other room. Are they okay? You know, I'm worried about my children. And I kept hearing people in my house. Like there was just a bunch of people in my house. And apparently, she'd shown up with her phone and they had taken pictures of her phone, not looking at who she'd saved the number. You know how you can change the name of the number, whoever you put the number in their name, that was changed. They didn't look at the number because if they had, they would have known it wasn't me. They took pictures, downloaded into evidence, according to the police report. The police officer said they looked at my phone. There were no such text messages on my phone. There were no text messages during the duration of time in which they stated were made. I overheard somebody saying something, and it was a female, so I'm only assuming it was the partner. I could be wrong. She probably deleted them. I honestly didn't even know where my phone was at the time because my paternal aunt had taught me, do not take your phone with you when you put your kids to bed because it's a distraction and it's going to keep them from going to sleep. So I would always leave it in wherever before I would go put them to sleep because I didn't want to cause them to stay up. So I honestly, when I'm being bombarded with questions coming from all which ways, I'm like, okay, what, where, what? I didn't know who to answer. And then they said they were talking to me and taking my vitals at the same time. And that's pretty much when I remember nothing more from that point on. And I realized it was at that time when they were taking my vitals and my blood pressure, stating my vitals were fine, that all of a sudden everything just started like time warp, like,
Yeah, I'm sure you were in total shock.
They had heavily sedated me, and they had taken me against my will, taken my jewelry off, my shoes, left me in Hello Kitty pajamas that matched my daughter, left my purse and everything, took my phone, me, and transported me to Banner Desert Hospital in the CCW ward, heavily sedated. I remember waking up, I think, hours and hours later and looking down and seeing a IV in my arm. And I remember seeing my arms like tied to something. And then I looked up and then I remember somebody saying something like along the lines of, I think she's awake, and then being out again. And the next time I woke up and there were 3 pieces of paper on my lap, and those 3 pieces of paper were from CPS, and they were stating that I was hospitalized for suicide and that my children had been picked up without a warrant and had been taken because there was no adult in the home that was capable of taking care of my children. Yet when I got out of the hospital, 9 days later, my friend and her daughter were still at my house. So I don't know why they wouldn't be considered capable of taking care of my children. So I was held against my will, no petition, not 72 hours, but 8 days before I was transferred to a urgent psychiatric facility, which released me within a matter of hours, saying there was nothing wrong with me. But I voluntarily stayed because it was already so late in the evening and I was in downtown Phoenix, and the paternal aunt was all the way in Chandler, and it was probably a good 45-minute drive, and she had my children. And so her husband had to be up at 4 in the morning for work, so I didn't want to inconvenience her already. She was already taking on so much for me as it was. I said, you know what, I'll bite the bullet. I'll stay here in this crazy house. I can deal with it one more day. And it just gave me more time to pretty much write out more information about what I needed to do when I got out. And then once I got out is when I hit the pavement and just started, like, what do I got to do? I went and drug tested, did another hair follicle test. I did self-refer to LifeWell Behavioral, did full assessments, psychiatric evaluations, counseling, all the things that I needed to do. Then went to court, met my public defender, which I never saw her, but when she was running from case, or judge, what is it called, courtroom to courtroom, because she was taking so many cases on. She would be in there on the stand, and she would be talking about my case, and I'm like thinking to myself, why didn't you talk to me beforehand? I did that 2 weeks ago. I finished that, you know, and she was never in communication with me. She didn't have time. I tried to communicate with her. It didn't work. I ended up having to let her go after my trial when the judge retired who was handling this case. This case, I had voluntarily given my phone over because AT&T would not hold text messages. It's too much data. They'll keep your phone records, but text messages is too much data, so they only keep it up to a certain amount. And that was with the court order. So what I did is I said, okay, well, I'll voluntarily give my phone over to a forensics expert in technology. He was hired by NASA, Phoenix, and basically department. They took my phone apart. He found every deleted text messages, everything, searched for keywords, everything that was in there. He said without a shadow of a doubt there was no way I had sent those messages, and there's no way I could have possibly deleted them in the time in which they were placed and in the time in which they arrived, and still have had completely stable vitals, because I would have been hysterical and in a rush. And he goes, and she would have had to have top clearance in order to even have access to this type of software, because it's very expensive, and you have to have basically know the right people in order to have access to it, and it's very expensive, and I'm not that computer savvy. But according to the Attorney General, who defends the department, made it out to that I was this computer genius, and that I had deleted these text messages. And the funny part that really gets me is when I reread the police report. It says, police officer states the text messages were not on the mother's phone, claims that there was a large chunk of messages missing, because there was text messages where we had spoken and then not spoken, and then messages from her randomly, like, well, what do you mean? That doesn't make sense. Why would you say such a thing? And I was like, what are you talking about? Because that's where the messages were put. And then it said, but at the hospital, a nurse verified that the text messages were actually on her phone. So I'm thinking to myself, how is it that a nurse was able to get onto my phone, what had security lock, it was turned off and it had a security lock on it, was able to get onto my phone and verify that they were on there? Was it magic? They just appeared out of nowhere? Like, I was really confused. So I filed an appeal because the opening argument, the mother's closing argument, I should say, that the public defender stated that, all of this was, I had done my services. There was no evidence that I was of harm to my children. The state psychiatric state was even testimony on my behalf in trial. The state contracted substance abuse tarot stated that I needed no services. I wasn't a drug addict. I didn't need anything. I had done weekly random UAs, never tested positive. Hair follicles at this point, I think it was up to 3. That's probably why I'm missing so much hair. The John Popovic was my attorney for the appeal. And
Well, hold on. Before you get to the appeal, what was the ruling of the lower court at this point? Because there was no evidence.
They said that my children were dependent against me because that I was neglectful and I had a substance abuse problem because the psychiatric evaluation used the drugs that I had experimented with 20 years prior and included drugs I've never even taken, and said that I had a plethora of extreme drug, a history of extreme drug use. And experimenting with a drug, like trying it once, I've never done.
They cannot use something from 20 years ago against you. This is ridiculous. And so they have basically nothing. They have clean drug tests. They have a clean bill of health, mental health. They were adults in the house at the time that you were taken on false allegations. There are no text messages that show any homicidal or suicidal content that you supposedly sent to your ex. So they have nothing. And yet they build a case against you by saying that a nurse had looked at your text messages.
Well, this is the thing. I was told that and this is what made sense, is when they did the birth to 5 assessment when my children were in foster care, my daughter was very explicit when she told me what they did. They tested them.
Your children were first, after this all happens, right? Your kids were placed in foster care. Let's go to that.
They were put in foster care when I was in the hospital. And then 3 days after that, I asked the paternal aunt, please will you take them? Please get them out of foster care. She knew that I didn't want them separated. I mean, it was tearing me apart to know that my kids were going through what I had gone through, and I did not want that. And the lady even said she'd never seen 2 children light up the way my 2 children did when they saw each other. And that made me so happy to know that they were going to be safe. And I knew that they knew their aunt and uncle, and they were familiar. It wasn't an uncomfortable situation. It was new, but, as far as living, but they had to abide by new rules, and they learned, all kinds of different things. And I'm not saying I disagree with everything she did. I mean, she has different ways of doing things. Everybody does. But she's military, and I'm a woman who was raised pretty much by herself, So, I mean, a lot of people look at me as, oh, she's the black sheep. She sticks out. She's unpolished. She has no filter. She's not going to go anywhere because, she's, because I came from California, I'm not the polished suburban mom that, I was expected to be. I was told to keep quiet in court, not say anything, not knowing that it was going to bite me in the butt later.
So once this ruling came through in the lower courts, The ruling was that the children were supposed to stay with the paternal aunts. Is that correct?
Well, the Foster Care Review Board, when we met, stated that they wanted the children to be returned to me, and they agreed that the paternal aunt was the, let's say, what was she, the
Like a guardian?
restrictive, I guess, and they wanted them to stay there because it was comfortable. I was still allowed to see them as often as I wanted as long as she supervised. I helped her as much as I could. I would see them at daycare after naps. I would do their birthday parties at school and still have birthday parties for them aside from school with, family and anybody that wanted to be involved. The father was always invited, whether or not he wanted to show up and leave a card or a gift at the door, I would have made sure she got it. It wasn't
But
enough.
at this point, she had custody of the kids,
No,
and
she just what they called kinship placement, which
okay,
means she was a temporary, she was not foster, she wasn't licensed. She was just a kinship placement, which is what they prefer, is to keep them with family. But quite often caseworkers like to try to slip that little known fact that you're 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 on a time frame from you, and they don't want you to know that you have, you know, a case plan. They don't want you to know what that case plan is. They tell you what you're supposed to do, and along the way they add to it or take from it and add to it and take from it. And each time I would complete something, I would get, oh, well, your supervisor, Karen, doesn't feel comfortable allowing you to have unsupervised visits at this time. And that's because their primary goal from the beginning was forced adoption, because I was a target, because of the fact that I had no family. I had nowhere for them to go. They were both bloodline, German, blonde hair, blue-eyed, the typical child that every family wants, and especially look like twins. They're very well spoken, and their birth site assessment stated that, she's above her class. I mean, she was supposed to be going into a accelerated kindergarten. And from the minute your child is, taken from you, CPS receives funding for completed adoptions. Your child's evaluated for, pick-up points at the time they're taken from custody. And, even the mildest disability sets them back. So, if a child has made allegations of sexual assault to, their doctor or a counselor or a therapist, they're quickly brushed under the carpet, because they don't want, people don't want a damaged child, as they would see. But sex and skin color, all of the things that determine the fate of the child in the adoption market and how much they're worth. And in this case, the bounty on their head was high. And so they have to meet certain criteria. The federal adoption incentive states that CPS must make an attempt to reunify with, the family or placement before they can go any further. So I actually had, after my, like I told you, my dependency, they said that it was a case of bait and switch, classic case of bait and switch, a bunch of smoke, no fire in sight. The judge retired, pushed it off to CPS, said, you handle it, kind of thing. I was given the same judge that I was given for my termination. I didn't even have a hearing or a trial. I was given a hearing, and Came to find out when I did an order of discovery that the father and the case manager were in constant communication, which made complete sense because there were allegations that I had made hotline calls, false hotline calls, and sent people to his home, which I didn't even know where he lived, and that I was stalking him and, you know, telling the case manager, you need to sever her rights and send them to us, and, you know, her responding back with, well, you know, would you like to have your rights or your services reinstated? And here I am going, what? You know, are these people crazy? You just admitted you made a huge mistake, and now you're willing to put them back in that situation? You know, you know, they gave the children to the father, which I was told in the very beginning, it's like a race. You and the father are at, you know, the starting lineup, and you both are given a certain amount of services. And whoever reaches the finish line first is who is going to give the first chance. Now, I had completed all my services within the first 8 months, on top of self-refer, on top of parent university classes, which were not only self-help, coping, self-esteem, and dealing with positive parenting, which my case aide said that I had probably some of the most unique parenting styles that she had ever seen, and they worked. That she only wished that she was as organized as me. My house was always clean and immaculate. Never had a complaint, and I had my judge on audio. It states, okay, so on this piece of paper I see a list of 4 things, and on these 4 things, how many visits has this, you know, mom had with her children? 100, 200, probably like 200. Okay, so out of those 200, these are all you could come up with, you know, and a lot of the things got thrown out because she didn't have medical background. She was trying to say I was taking street drugs when all she had to do was Google and see that the one medication I was taking due to my thyroid and lack of metabolism and the inability to metabolize like most people, hydromorphone is a part of morphine sulfate, and I was prescribed that. But they changed, the judge ceased my testing, and when they pulled my motion for physical custody, not just custody, because they were planning on keeping legal custody, they tried to pull a quick one, they pulled all of that the same day. They curtailed all of my services, and it was the day before I was going to have my children 7 days full time. And I contacted the supervisor, Karen, and I said, well, why would you do this the day before I'm supposed to have my children 7 days full time? And her response, it threw me for a loop and still haunts me to this day. She said, whoever told you you were ever getting your children back?
Oh my God, so cruel. What's this?
And I said, what? And she said, I'm not going to be able to make any changes to your parenting until I can prove that you don't have someone living in your home. Now, mind you, August 14th, the same judge, ordered that the children be placed with the father who lived down the street, who had used me from the 9th to the 14th to help him set up the place in order for the children to transition into the home, which I did. Provided clothes, shower curtains, towels, food, took him to do everything he needed to so he could pass the family reunification team check, which he later denied and said that I had no part of it, which is funny because we showed up to court together. And we agreed that, you know, we were going to co-parent, and that he was going to allow the children to see me on the weekends. They were going to come over and go swimming, and then all of a sudden she got involved again out of nowhere. And I found out later it was because there was, I guess, another child involved or pregnancy of some sort, and that she was staying in the shadows because I guess they didn't want any other problems. And rightfully so. I'm not trying to cause problems for anybody either, but, to give up your children, not even 10 weeks, you've had them. You go to court on the 3rd of November. They did a spot check, and they found numerous people living in the home that weren't supposed to be, that refused to give their names and socials. My son, too, found wandering the neighborhood aimlessly, just no one even knew he was gone. My daughter had told me she had to take care of my son and was told to pull his hair and smack him because I caught her smacking her brother once. And I said, why are you doing that? And she said, well, that's what I was told to do when he was crying. And I said, what? And she said, well, that's what I was taught. And I was like, well, no, you love your brother. You don't hit your brother. And she basically was the only source of attention from anybody. Everyone neglected him because he denied paternity to him the entire time, only accepted it because he knew that came as a package deal.
I mean, it's just outrageous that your children were placed with your ex who didn't want to have any paternal rights to his children.
Well, it even says in the second foster care review board, it said something along the lines of, but you found the child was found wandering the streets, yet the children were still allowed to remain in the home, and why is this woman still allowed to be making decisions regarding this case? She'd never met me. She's never been to my house. She's never watched me interact with my children. We've invited the case manager numerous times, even the case aide, to participate, even stop by and participate in a partial visit just to see, make note of how we interact, our bond.
What's the name of this CPS worker?
Well, the ongoing case manager was Karen Youngman, and Karen Youngman was the puppeteer, I would call her, circus act, and the paternal aunt and I had both sent numerous submissions into Carla Miller, which was her superior, requesting a different supervisor because she'd gone in with tunnel vision, according to my public defender, that she had immediately just assumed that my ex was telling the truth and that I was just this horrible mother and person and drug addict, and and I had an issue and I wouldn't accept the fact that I had a problem. And that was my problem. And I was like, okay, all right, I guess I have a problem. So I did the therapy, I did the counseling, and yes, I did have some breakthroughs, and I did learn a lot, because pain does change people, especially when you lose the two things in your life that you never thought in a million years that someone could take from you for the fact that technology is so easily manipulated nowadays that you can take someone's children away from you, or because someone made you mad and you're spiteful and vindictive, and the way you're going to get back at them is by making sure they die a lonely, sad, pathetic death in their little crap hole of an apartment, and threaten them and make them feel as if they're helpless.
This is what the current partner of your ex stated. Is that correct?
I mean, both of them have. I mean, it's like their lifelong, mission in life is it's for me to kill myself. Basically, I'm constantly given a hidden message, kill yourself, just kill yourself. Just kill, like, well, you don't have the meaningful. What are you here for? Just kill yourself. Just kill yourself.
I want to share. I want to share some of these because you sent me some of them. So let's share with the audience some of these very hateful messages because they're outrageous. Well, we can just grab whatever one here. You're a lying fucking cunt. If anyone molested those kids, it was you, dumb fucking pimp whore. I took my daughter to the doctor. It's on and on, right? I mean, there's so many of them here. We can go answer the phone. We need to talk to you. They're harassing you, right?
Yeah, that was when he admitted that in January when I had the cops come and the children were actually having unsupervised visits with me. It seemed funny because in November he withdrew from the case months prior to when my children showed. Now, during that time, he admitted that if I didn't stop sending police to his house, he was going to make false allegations against me and send them to my home, which he did.
It's all been false allegations. That's the problem, and you've been able to evidence that.
Then I was sent here 2 curses, which Ava is one of the daughter's names, stating that that's just 2 of the one. I think there was like 7 of them. I deleted them, but I was sent curses. I was sent LinkedIn accounts that say go fuck yourself or kill yourself. I was sent. I have emails upon emails calling me just because I have a rotten uterus doesn't make me a mother. I am a poor excuse for a human being and a horrible person and a horrible mother, and I'm just jealous because he finally found someone who's a real mother and he's upgraded and all this other stuff. I have other things to do with my life. I don't.
Well, I want to say something about this because I know your ex is watching this right now, and I want to let him know that, you know what, you decided to have children together, and if this is how you treat the mother of your children, then you really need to think about what you're doing, because the mother of your children has the most sacred bond with your children. And for you to put these kind of messages out to the mother of your children, and for your children to be watching this on YouTube, because you know what? They're going to eventually see that this is how you have treated the mother of your children, calling her a lying cunt whore, false allegations, removing them from the... I mean, this is like the worst thing you could ever do to the mother of your children. And it goes for all these fathers who go after protective mothers and use false allegations to sever the mother-child bond. It is the worst thing you can ever do to anyone. And for these curses, I mean, what is this? What kind of hateful, spiteful, awful way to be? I just feel terrible, and I want to share this this website here, because the types of people that do this are psychopaths, sociopaths. This is a really wonderful website, abusesanctuary.blogspot, and it's all about the smear campaign, which is what your ex and his new wife have done to you to take your children from you. A narcissist's weapon of choice is often verbal slander, lies, playing the victim in flipped tales of who was the victim and who was the abuser, gossip, rage, verbal abuse, and intentional infliction of emotional pain. It is a systematic dismantling of another person's relationships, reputation, emotional, physical, and spiritual health, life, and very soul. This is why narcissists are so often called emotional vampires. Now, you are under attack from emotional vampires here. These people have lied and cheated and stolen from you and then told everyone that it's all your fault. This particular page, someone shared this with me, Coral Annika Thiel, who is a wonderful advocate for victims of sociopaths and narcissists like you and me and many, many other protective mothers. And I highly recommend everyone to read this because it sums up exactly what has happened to you. Your ex has no heart, no conscience, and no remorse.
Well, I mean, when you say that, not to cut you off, but I was crying to him the day that he walked out and he wouldn't look me in the face. And I said, do you not think that one day that you're going to regret the choice that you're making right now, because it's not about me and you anymore. It's about your daughter and your son. And he wouldn't look me in the face. And I said, I really want you to think about this because, you know, as a woman, I would never get involved with a man who had a wife and children because, especially being with him, knowing his history, and who he'd been with before and how he'd done pretty much the same thing to them he did to me, which is just going and going. I mean, you would think, okay, they're going to do the same thing to you unless you put them on a leash and keep them in a den somewhere, you know. That's not a relationship. I mean, that's not love. I mean, that's kind of binding somebody to you for a lifetime of, because that's what you want, you know.
It's control. It's control. The agenda is control.
I never forced him to marry me. I never forced him to love me. I never forced him to tell me he loved me or I'm his soulmate or to tell me the things that he did and the things that I found out later on, you know, that I'm not a perfect person. Nobody is. There's no such thing as perfect parents. There's no such thing as perfect children. There's no such thing as being perfect. And I know I'll never be perfect. And I'm constantly striving to be a better person. And I know that the person I was then, and I've had to learn to forgive him, even just for myself, to move forward, and to forgive myself for being jealous and saying things that may have been hurtful or, you know, to him because I was hurt, you know. I mean, I was mad to walk in and find out that, you know, my best friend was, you know, having sex with my husband, you know.
That's awful. That's awful.
It's not something
real, you know.
It hurts. And I thought that he was my soulmate. And so far into my life, I never knew that somebody could be so emotionless. Not one tear, not one ounce of remorse, not one anything. And when I asked him why he couldn't look me in the face and explain to me why would he do this to us? Why would he leave? Why wouldn't he not at least give a fighting chance for our family? He says, because I don't want to hurt you. And I was like, but you already have. What do you think you're doing? You don't think that when your children are older and they find out the truth and they find out that you gave them up and you were given the opportunity to have a life with them and visitations with them, you chose not to and said, oh, when they get older, I'll find them if I want to, kind of thing, because you were busy making a new family with someone else, which is exactly what his father did to him. He was a product of another family who that father was with his mom, and they had him, and then he they went off and he went with his wife and his family.
This is what
Yeah.
often happens when children have difficult childhood or childhoods with abuse, molestation, neglect, and they don't process it when they get to adulthood. They usually end up repeating the same type of karma onto the next generation, which is why it's so important to process your past. But I think in the case of narcissists and sociopaths, there's no recovery from that. Researchers have looked at individuals that have these personality disorders. There's no recovery. You have to have a line to your heart, to source, in order to be willing and able to look at yourself and see yourself as a work in progress. If you know the brains, if you scan the brain of someone who has sociopathy or pedophilia for that matter, these people have no electrical activity in the part of their brain that has electrical activity with people that have empathy, right? And regular folks who have healthy, normal brain functioning, but have very different type of MRI scan. This is the problem. So we end up, most protective mothers are dealing with these types of exes. We are usually the ones with the empathy. We're trying to make everybody happy, right? We're trying to bend over backwards to make it happen. And we find out it's not possible to parent with a domestic terrorist. It is not possible to negotiate with someone who has no empathy. So that is the horrific situation that we find ourselves in. But I want to go back to your story, because at this point, the court has ordered the kids to be with him, and the children, your son was found wandering down the streets. He was covered in bugs. There was also molestation involved with your daughter at this point. Is that correct?
I wasn't involved in any of this. The first time something was mentioned about molestation or sexual allegations was by the aunt, because she had asked the daughter why she was wearing underwear, and she had said, oh, 'cause Daddy don't want me wearing underwear. She never mentioned anything to me because she didn't want to upset me. And so, of course, I had no clue that there were detectives involved. I had no idea that anything of that nature was going on. I never coached my daughter. I never took my daughter to the ER. I never said, okay, now when you get there, you're going to say Daddy told you or Daddy touched you in your private area, or you're going to do this. I never did any of that. I didn't want to be a part of it because I didn't want people thinking that I was coaching her, because I would never want her to have a unhealthy relationship with her father. I didn't want her to look at her father that way. I didn't want her, and I couldn't in a million years, as long as when we were in California, he was uh, such a great dad. I mean, him and her were like two peas in a pod. Like she was daddy's little girl, you know. And when we moved here, it was really weird. Like his priorities changed, and thinking. I mean, he actually did scream out the window when he found out he was having a boy. I'm having a boy. I'm having a boy. You know, he was so excited. And then after Logan was born, he had colic, and it was very hard because I'm dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that post-traumatic stress disorder when you have a child? Yeah. And then my son had colic, and I'm dealing with him, and then she is jealous, of course, and wanted to be in bed watching him. She considered him hers. Wanted to feed him, which of course I encouraged them to be close, and they were. But as him being 12 years younger than me, I can understand to a point it all being overwhelming. And there being an easy way out because there's somebody, else there that is got less issues and more fun and less responsibility, and it was an opportunity to get away from the things that needed to be done. But at the same time, that's just not how you handle responsibility in life. I mean, I put my life in jeopardy having 2 children at high risk, being at my age, because I waited so long, and he knew I did, because I wanted to make sure that I had them with somebody who I could give them what they deserved. He knew what I had been through. He knew that I had no childhood, and my childhood was basically learning to survive and learning the hard way. And I
So
wanted
you had the parental aunt stepping in as a mother figure, which is wonderful. But she ended up getting detectives involved because she noticed signs of possible molestation of your daughter, as he was.
yeah, she was the, well, because they were living with her.
Yeah.
The foster care review board highly suggested that they not allow the father to have any type of unsupervised visitation at that time. Karen Youngman decided she was going to play custody court and go against what everybody stated, the judge, everybody, the family. The paternal aunt even emailed her saying, I don't feel comfortable. I think this is wrong. And she approved him for nights and weekends. I know that he was arrested, I think, during part of that time too. And yet it was noted in the report that he completed all of his services successfully, and yet it stated he missed many visits. He was late, sometimes didn't even show, no call, no show to pick them up for weekends. Like, I never missed a visit. I was there a half hour early, sometimes 15 minutes after. I never rescheduled or canceled if I was sick, I would reschedule because I didn't want to get them sick, but I never canceled.
It sounds like this Karen Youngman had it in for you.
Oh,
She did
did.
everything to sabotage the relationship between you and your children and to get your ex in the picture.
Yeah, she told me criminals can be good fathers too. And she told me that he coats guns for a living. That's his second job aside from tattooing, and bringing strangers into the home around the children is fine. And I said, okay, well, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I said, but you're telling me that having a gun in my home for protection when I'm a single mother, which 90% of the women in the state have them, he's allowed to have an arsenal of guns in his house. And my son said that he got hit in the head. He had a bruise on his forehead, and he said, yeah, well, Daddy hit me in the head with a gun. And I was like, what? And it turned out later it supposedly was a Nerf gun. And he had like AK-47s, all kinds of guns. She said, it's okay. He can do whatever he wants with the guns around the children as long as they're not loaded. And I was just like,
she's out of control. This woman is like, and this is what's so upsetting about our cases is like, it's what I call paternal fascism. They favor the fathers over the mothers. This is that father's rights agenda and that federal funding that you were talking about that is fueling that father's rights agenda. And it's often inflicted by women. A lot of these key players in our cases are women. It's our female attorneys and female social workers, female judges.
I was female judge, female guardian ad litem, female assistant attorney general. All 3 of my case managers were female, and none of them did their job. The ombudsman's office, when I made a complaint to them, she was a female. Karen Youngman was a female. Her supervisor was a female. And the funny thing is when you go to Karen Youngman's Facebook page, her and her son are holding guns. Her and her daughter, or his girlfriend or wife, whatever, they're like holding guns up like this. They're all gangstered out, and they have their grandchildren up there, and they're talking about happy holidays and pictures of kids, and I'm so happy and life's so grand. And it's like, okay, how do you sleep at night knowing that you signed off termination on how many families in one day? You've stripped children of their rights because of out-of-home placement, when I was under the assumption that in the Family First Act, it states that to terminate a parent's rights, there are, three things. There's, time and out-of-home placement, drug abuse, neglect, all these different things. And it says the exemptions are if the child is in out-of-home placement with family, kinship care, and or unlicensed foster family. That's a relative, you know what I mean? Which puts my children exempt from that 15 to 22 months out of home placement, because I was fully engaged with my children at all times. I saw them almost every single day, which upset him because he was like, how is it that you get to see them more than me? That's not fair. And I was like, well, if they said, okay, you can see them for 15 minutes, I would get in my car and I would drive 20 minutes to see them for 15 minutes, to drive 20 minutes back, because I wanted to see them. And, that's just how I was. And I changed a lot of things about myself, and they still have this perception of me as being this person they used to know, and not knowing that that person's not alive anymore. That person's gone, because I changed so many things about myself, not just because of the pain that changes people and the fact that the unconditional love that I felt for my kids, I knew that no man could ever give me. All the things that you learn as a mom, you know what I mean? They make.
Look, there was nothing against you. Let me share this over here. This is from a court document that you sent me.
That was my appeal that was just submitted to the Court of Appeals.
So here it states, right, that mother pays for the following bills: car maintenance, gas, internet, rent, car payment, electric, groceries, and activities and food for her children. And what is noteworthy is that Ms. Luna testified that despite the mother's disorganized behavior, well, you have ADHD, the mother has been able to maintain employment, housing, and participating in everyday activities that normal individuals do on a daily basis. So what is it that this Karen Youngman has against you? You're a fully functional mother. You have 3 degrees. You've been cleared of mental health issues. You've been cleared of drug abuse issues. They have nothing against you. But you ended up getting your parental rights terminated. That's very intense. And is this Karen Youngman individual behind that as well?
She's the one who signed my case plan change. She said that she did it on the basis of a belief that someone was living in my home that had an open case and whose children were around my kids. Now, first of all, let me remind you, my children were visiting me in my home throughout my entire case. And until August of 2015, they hired a new agency. They did not provide in-home visitation. They only provided visitation and a visitation location, which was a church, with I don't know how many families. And I went there twice a week. Now, I ran into this one mother who had her 2 boys transported by, I guess, a group home van. And she would take 2 buses and a Metrolink by my house, and then literally walk a mile to get to this location and asked me if I would pick her up from the metro and drive her, because I was driving for Uber, if I would pay, she could pay me to drive her. And I was thinking, well, I'm going to the same place. Why not get paid for it, you know? So my daughter, of course, and my son see me getting in and out of the car with this lady 2 times a week. And my case aide was writing in the reports that we were helping each other, and it was refreshing to see that 2 mothers were helping each other out with food, and because we would all cook in like a general kitchen, and we had like a cafeteria area where everyone would sit and eat. We didn't hang out together. We spent our own time together with our family. It's not like we were there to hang out with other people. But she did ask me, because she'd been dealing with her case a lot longer than mine, why she hadn't been given services. And I said, well, then you need to take action yourself. You need to contact these people, and if you want help, I'll help you. She had no ride. She paid for a taxi all the time. And she goes, well, if I give you the money, will you take me? And I said, sure. I took her to Taros. I sat for 4 hours while she did her psych eval. I, took her to task. I drove her all the way back to her home in, Union Hills. She lived with her daughter and her baby's daddy. And she had 2 boys that were in a group home, and they were never allowed to leave that group home unless they were transported by van. I know this because I was in a group home, and you can't go anywhere without permission or being signed out, whatever. So those children were never at my home. The only time they were around my children was in a visitation center, and my children were like 2 and 4. They were preteens. What do they possibly have in common? I mean, they're playing football. My kids are on the swings. So they weren't hanging out together. They made it out to seem that I was lying and that there was a belief that this person was living with me. And I said, no, she was not living with me. I was just helping her.
It really looks like they're seeking for any little thing to throw at you to paint you as an unfit parent.
That's the thing. It says, in America today, they're sifting through the poor, looking for the best product for the adoption market. In the greed for federal funding, job security, and withdraw profits for adoption agencies, and defrauds the state Medicare programs. And then it states that doctors will lie under oath. The adoption market's going to dry up like the stock market. And most importantly, these children are damaged beyond repair, entering the next phase of incarceration, America's prison system, or worse, addiction or death. And our sweet children that smiled and loved and trusted us are now being traded to career adopters, foster providers, and childless couples because they have more money, because they've already drained us of all our resources. And like, I wasn't a what is it called, a low income, or as they say, the ones that they target. But they targeted me for different reasons. They targeted me because I was naive to the whole, let's keep her busy with all of these services while at the same time we're going to shop around for parents, because these are the kids that are going to make us a lot of money, because we're going to adopt them out to people that aren't family, because when we do that, we get an even bigger bonus and an incentive, and we get that per child. So imagine, they were supposed to be adopted to a family that they had already bonded with, and come to find out now they're up, for somebody must have had a higher bidder, and because now there's someone else. No, so it's in the better interest of my children to be with complete strangers, to have, and I'm sure you've seen on videos where they're teaching children how to say their new name, like, oh, your new name is this, and these are your parents. No, then I am not a hard person to forget. My daughter's going to know, her mom's got red hair, tattoos. You're not my mom. I'd like to see somebody tell my daughter, unless they heavily sedate her, which I don't see going over very well.
Well, let's talk about in the last few minutes that we have what you can do, because I know you've appealed the decision and the appeal was denied. Is that correct?
No, the appeal wasn't denied. The appeal uh,
Or did
that
they uphold the lower court's
yeah, the
decision?
lower court's decision, they said that they didn't want to submit another response because they didn't want to let the court think that they were in error. And I was like, so you're just going to submit an opening argument, let them respond and not respond back? And we already know they're going to just rubber stamp state. At state level, it goes nowhere. I mean, you have to go to a higher court to get anything done.
All right,
And
let's do this. I would like you to, as homework, watch this video here by Sean McMillan, the nuts and bolts of filing a civil rights claim, because this attorney is specialized in going after CPS workers like Karen Youngman and her superior. Let's face it, Carla Miller, the superior of Karen Youngman, is responsible for what has gone down in this case and for the fact that you have gotten targeted. Now, the good
that's
news
funny. I'm
for
supposed
you,
to go to Sean McMullen is coming to Phoenix on September 29th, and I've signed up. He's doing a seminar.
yes, go there. He's the man. He is the
I know.
hero
I'm trying to get a hold
of
of him.
He's the hero of parents just like you. As a matter of fact, he helped this
I
mother,
read.
Deanna Fogarty Hardwick, to sue the caseworkers that did exactly what happened to you, to her. She sued those individuals because they do not have immunity. And she not only got her daughter back, she was also awarded with $10.6 million. Now, doesn't stop there. The daughter ended up suing too. And this is brand new, fresh off the bench of the United States Court of Appeals, the Ninth Circuit in California. This is the daughter, Presley Hardwick, who ended up suing the social workers on her Fourth and 14th Amendment constitutional rights violations
My daughter's
for,
rights were my 14th. Her
yes,
14th violate were because they came to her school, pulled her out of school, and pretty much browbeat her into finally stating what they needed to use against me in court. And she said that Angelica Luna used it as a tool to terminate my rights, and then that was the point of my case plan all along.
right. So you're going to fight back. You're going
My
to go
daughter
after
will
these
too.
people, and your daughter's going to, my daughter is going to do too. And that is my message for everyone who's watching, all the fathers and attorneys that are watching, all the social workers that are watching. We're coming after you. We're going after you, and we're going to play this game out on your turf with your game. And you're going to pay for all the false allegations and for all the nonsense that you've thrown at us, for destroying our relationship with our children, for destroying and severing the mother-child bond, which is the most gross human rights violation that you can inflict.
And not
And
even
these,
allowing them to say goodbye. I mean, my kids don't even know if I'm alive or dead. I mean, one day I'm there, and the next, what were they told? Did I just
same thing happened to me. I didn't have any contact or a sign of life with my daughter for 564 days due to corrupt attorneys
This is what
who
they looked
are,
like when I last saw them. I don't know if you could see this.
you can barely see it. We have a few minutes left. Let's bring up a picture of your kids together. A really cute picture of them eating ice cream together. And
That was last Christmas. I took them to ride the ponies and take pictures with Santa and make Christmas ornaments, and they both had so much fun. And I always did outside stuff with them, do lights. And I mean, even in the report, the timeline that I did with the paternal aunt, which the guardian ad litem and everyone turned, basically I don't have a mother figure anymore. I have no one in my life anymore, and because I'm sure that part of the stipulation was to cut ties with me, or they wouldn't be able to be a part of their life anymore. And
Well, you have a new family now, and the family is called Protective Mothers, because we're here to support you and help you. Sean McMillan is the attorney to go to and learn from him. Go after them. It's what I'm doing. It's what I suggest all the protective mothers do. We need to make this we need to just vexatiously litigate against them the way they have done against us, and serve them up their own lies and false allegations, and have them hold them accountable for their nonsense, and demand monetary sanctions awarded to us. So that would be my message for you and for all the protective mothers who are listening. We have come to the end of the show. I want to thank you for sharing your story. I am really sorry that, what you've gone through and your kids, what you've gone through. Losing your parental rights is very serious. And I hope, I pray that you're going to go after Karen Youngman and Carla Miller and have this ruling reversed. And I hope that you're going to be successful in that so you can be reunited with your children. I also...
the families that have decided that they want to go on a hunger strike until Trump actually follows through with what he says he's going to do as far as making families first and taking care of what he promised in order to get the White House back. And I know Brian Kinter and some other big names, people that I'm in contact with have also, been involved in, but it's still up in the air. No one really knows if that's going to happen or not, but I am fully involved. I mean, it's not about just my kids. It's about everybody's kids.
You've been I've seen your activism for over a year. You're a wonderful children's rights activist. You're doing so much work for everybody. So I want to thank you for that as well. I also recommend you go after your ex with intentional torts for emotional distress, and make him pay for his defamation. Get him on defamation. Save all these text messages. He's been outed on Hell is for Children today. We haven't mentioned his name, but he knows now that the whole world knows your story, and that should keep you safe right there. And we are supportive of you and your fight. So I hope this interview is going to help you, put your case out there. You'll have a YouTube link that you can share with anyone who might be able to assist you in filing these civil rights claims and going after these individuals that have inflicted these human rights violations on you and your children. And I hope that the interview contributes to you getting reunited with your children once again. So thank you for sharing your story. You're very brave. It's difficult to do, to relive it. I know that, but it's worth it because it'll be another tool for you in your fight for justice. So thank you. And thanks everybody for watching another episode of Hell's for Children. I hope to see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.